4 o'clock too. Far out.
Oh yeah, we've got a consent.
Yes means yes, no means no.
It's like a consent app.
How you boys doing?
Mr. Nudgy.
I'm fantastic. I'm from where you'd rather be.
No, I'm there already. I'm in my office at my gym, so within 5 kilometers. And Kieran, that looks so gorgeous background there, Kieran.
The one and only Mr. William Liu, back at it again.
Man.
Just thought I'd show, just like throw up a bit of props from the weekend, man, from the best Father's Day most fathers have had in a long time if they got to tune into Roots, which I'm sure Mr. Parnham did, spoil and tuned in.
I got a photo from the lovely Aunt Parnham showing me that Andrew had fallen asleep. So any comments he has.
It was a big day, man. It was a big day. I'm not going to lie.
He was having a nap along with my streaming service.
Yeah, that set it off for me. It was a great start.
As I explained to certain people involved in it, when they seemed to try to get me to calm down a little bit, was like having a live stream only event with a really shitty, faulty stream at the start, and I'll explain why later, is like having a 100% Muay Thai show with no Muay Thai. It was like, if I showed up and there was no Thai boxing fights today, that would be false advertising. If I show up and do a live stream only event and there's no live stream, see how we've got a problem?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I sent it to a fair few friends who had never streamed live Muay Thai event before, and it was a pretty awesome first experience. So thank you, Sai. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Oh, shit, man.
It was hard work. It was definitely very, very hard work that night.
Positively, though, man, I think you broke the record for the most streams.
Yeah, which we should be doing all the time, but
yeah.
I'm just don't mind me. I'm just trying to see if our live streaming is working or not today.
You got one of those faces that old men have when they're trying to read their phone.
Man, it's horrendous. As soon as I get technology like this, I'm like, what's going on? But anyway, so gentlemen, how was One Championship on Friday night?
As expected.
Well, I think we called the 2 fights, didn't we? The ones that we commented on, we called them. I went to sleep after I watched like 3 of the MMA fights. I was done. I didn't stay up for I watched the girls. I watched like Jackie. It was I thought Jackie would put her away a little bit earlier, but obviously didn't. Like it went the whole way. So that was it. Daniela? Is that her name? Yeah, thick head on her. Like good on her. She took some shots, and then Anissa, which just came out like a pit bull. It
almost felt like Jackie was too patient. Like I think she did the right thing when she landed that big shot, and she didn't panic, and she didn't like try and but then
she hurt her a couple of times and like just really held back. And I appreciate people not being dumb and getting caught and getting hurt and stuff, but I don't know, did you feel like the other girl had any chance in hell of like actually hurting her if Jackie did turn it up?
I could have just called the fight, honestly, in the 3rd round.
Yeah. I think it goes the same with Janet, perhaps the area, because Brian trains them to be quite smart in controlling the ring, and they do have very good footwork, and I think they are hard to catch, and they do put a lot in between, and it is hard to bridge that distance, and they're good strikers. But I wonder for both of those girls, if there was someone strong to test them in the clinch, would it become a different story, like a walk, someone who's going to be aggressive, walk forward and really just like maul them down a bit in the clinch, which you would have hoped from that Daniela girl being from FA, but not good enough in that area to be able to do that to perhaps get the win. I think striking it was always going to end up that way.
Yeah.
And this is fight, like I only saw the last little bits before they called it. That could have made like that girl, the last 30 seconds, she was just getting her head popped up left and right.
Well, Was there?
It's so funny because you're watching this doing pads and training, and you go, she's just like, and then she hits these girls, and they're like, their heads popping up like a Pez dispenser.
She looks a lot more dangerous in fights than she does when you watch her train. Hey, that's what I think. When I watch her train, I think, that doesn't. There's only so much you can tell when you watch someone hit pads. But whenever I've done it, I've gone, oh, okay. But then she looks like she hits hard. She looks strong when she fights.
And then, like, a little off topic, Andrew, just relax. So they had the MMA fights, and there was a MMA fight that there was a bit of an outcry under decision. I genuinely didn't watch the fight. It was the Filipino girl. Who did she fight? Kieran, do you remember?
The Korean. I think she fought it was a Korean girl, like Sam. I'll get it wrong. It's the Korean girl. I think.
When I watched the when I look through because the next morning I usually wake up, and because I fall asleep so early, like I don't know how the hell I actually do shows. I just go on Instagram or YouTube and just see the results, and there's always comments, and usually, like, because there's so many Filipino fans, and there's usually so many, like, if that Indian girl, the last time she lost her MMA fight, and there's so many fans, even the Iranian guy, he gets knocked out cold, and they just, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, he got knocked out. Like, what are we disputing here? And I never know, like, if it's just a crowd, like the fan base having an outcry, or it was legitimately a questionable result. So I don't know. Did you actually watch the fight?
That was the one. No. I watched a few before, and then that was the one that I fell asleep for. But I know, and just so we don't want to like drone on and Andrew get the shits with us, but if I don't care
if he gets the shits. Look at
I'm not really a big MMA fan, but that Ritu Fonga and the Chinese girl, like, just for any combat sports fan in general, that was an awesome fight to watch. Yeah. Like, that Chinese girl nearly punched her absolute head off. And I don't know much about wrestling, man, but it was if I'm going to say to anyone, watch any fight, go back and watch that one. Because just like from a combat, I really enjoyed that.
I guess the reason I'm sort of bringing it up is that they've since then announced like another review, which Chatri does. Like he obviously the most famous one was with Petrosian and Pet Moricott. So, like, one, from what I understand, and you've been there, I was there like 10 years ago, so I think things have changed. I don't know if there's a outside independent body that oversees these things, and even like when there's a call for a review, if it's an independent thing or it's an internal thing where they just make the decision that, hey, this wasn't popular, or the owner of one looked at it and thought I didn't like it, and then they called the review. So that's what I'm trying to gauge, is where does the idea of the review come through?
I think it's just their refs and judges, like as a collective, get together and watch it again and rescore it. I think that's
who decides on whether that's going to happen. Is it like,
well, whoever makes the most noise on social media? I'm sorry.
Super Bond, get ready.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So let's talk about. They announced is it October 18?
15, I think.
The next card, the Grand Prix,
potentially Freedom Day for
the kickboxing rules.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yes, sometime in October. Yeah, it's a full kickboxing card, with the exception of maybe like one or two Thai boxing fight, maybe one Thai boxing fight.
Yeah, I heard like little bits about it and knew it was going to get announced, and I was like, holy shit! And like the amount of high-level guys they've got there is just in that card. Like, as if you go back to the old K1 days where it was like everyone good was there. It's sick, but obviously the main fight of concern to us, even though it's sort of under kickboxing rules, is Super Bon and Georgia Petrosian. So that's another one. Like, I think Super Bon's fought enough non-Muay Thai fights to sort of not cause another review of a decision fighting the golden one.
And yeah, I think they'll be pretty strict on it too. Hey, like, we were there. Josh fought kickboxing on the undercard of that rematch between Petrosian and Thingo. And I remember we made a point in our training of any time there was a clinch, like we literally practiced on pads, anytime they locked up, for him to put his hands out to show that he wasn't clinching, because we knew that they would be watching it so closely. I think maybe after that, they're a little bit more on top of it, but they give you pretty strict rule briefings. Like they give you that, you sit down and you have the chance to ask questions, and there's no chance to say, oh, I didn't listen or I didn't know, because the rule briefings in the week of the event are always very like, they literally give physical examples. They will get often Rick, who's the director of competition, up there with another person and show what's a foul and what's not and blah, blah, blah. Like every time I've gone, they've done that. So it's hard to have a leg to stand on to say, oh, I didn't know, because they go over it pretty closely.
I think what they said, the reasoning for the Petrosian, the rematch, was that under K1 rules, the fighter is supposed to disengage and he wasn't. So, but I don't remember the last K1 rules, not K1 fight, K1 rules fight, where that's actually happened. Almost 100% of the time.
Francis picked it straight away, man. Francis from Waco picked it straight away. And what just goes to show that it's not our sport, and hence it's not the K1 hour really. But like, yeah, I don't.
My understanding from when I've gone over.
You need to calm down about the whole K1 thing, because we're going to talk about Bada Hari's fight as well. So just relax, all right?
My understanding of it though is that if you do, like, if say you do have, because you do have a short period of time to clinch and throw a knee, but if you don't disengage, if you stay locked on and the referee has to break you, any work that you did going into that first bit in the clinch is discarded. But if you say like knee and grab on and then push your way out of the clinch, then it still stays and scores. That's what has always been my like for one in particular, for kickboxing, that's been my.
You can answer that well, Kieran. I really wonder what Andrew's contribution to this is. Before we go back to Muay Thai, before Andrew gets anxiety attacks, did any of you watch the Bada Hari fight?
I just
going in for the kill.
I did. It was fantastic watching it.
Man, I bought the entire pay-per-view for just that one fight. I literally bought it 10 seconds before they walked into the ring. And man, like the last three fights have just been hell for Bada. Like gone from absolutely caning and about to walk away with the win to like knockouts, broken leg.
I was sitting on the couch this afternoon at the gym because it's like the most expensive lounge room that I own. And I was watching the old Bada and Rico fight, man. Yep. And it showed when he was walking out and showed the crowd and the stadium. Unreal. Like that's
it didn't even look like much, hey? It looked like like that.
Raised off the top.
But it cut him and everything, right?
Crazy.
But it was funny because he goes, that's what we practiced in training, was when I was against the rope, just to throw that high left kick. And like, you know, Bada had been up to that point, was actually quite reserved when he hurt him. And he hurt him like twice in the first round, once in the second round. He actually didn't go full nuts. And then just bang, it was like, you know, it's as close to being able to feel bad for Bada Hari as you can. That whole thing was just like, oh, fuck, what happened?
Love it.
Anyway, so boys, I didn't ask you this already before we got on, but since we're doing weight divisions, we're up to the boys again this week. I think let's jump up to 63.5 kilos. We should cover between 57 and 63.5. So if you guys want to differentiate within that group, obviously 63.5 was like a golden weight division back in the day for Muay Thai in Australia, along with the middleweight. It's a little bit quiet at the moment. So who are we thinking? Andy?
There's a guy that's moved down to Muay U. He's a bit big now, isn't he? That left kicker, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's
I don't think David's going to make that weight. Oh.
Man, especially not after lockdown, that's for sure. Max was, but I think Max is more, like 65 now, upwards of 65-ish, which would make a good fight against River.
So we got that River, and then also, so the guy we spoke about him on the first one is the boys who have moved from 57, 59 to 61 already. So like your Kians and that, or Zach, from Riddlers, but they're already like too light. So 63.5 is basically just River, couple of ties.
Chad,
I mean, we've got
Chad
61. We
still
still
claims
have.
to fight at 63. Chad will still, they still.
Well, Chad's fight with Ramesh was matched at 63.5. And I think Ramesh took it up to 65. But like, if we jump too quickly, I think we miss out on guys like Chris Newen and Van and those guys who are still fighting at that 61 kilos.
Spoke about them, yeah.
In New South Wales, Andy, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, what's Geordie Bargali and
59 to 61.
they're a bit lighter. Yeah.
So I mean, they're even, I guess after this might even be pushing up to 63.5. But yeah, I mean, in our state, they're the best, obviously, and top of the rankings, but I don't think they're at that level yet.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think in Victoria, we've got obviously Ramesh, River.
Chris, so Chris still going to fight?
Chris Newen? Yeah, at 61.
61. Okay, cool. 61.
Yeah, so him and Van are matched for December.
Chris and Zach will be sick.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, so what about the imaginary weight division of 65?
Well, 63.5, we still have Jordan Godfredson. We have Chad Collins. We've got Ramesh. We've got River. And then like in Victoria, we've got those next sort of tier of guys like Corey Barrett and Suleiman, who aren't quite that sort of level. So obviously Roy Boy's gone. Chad in Queensland, we mentioned. So if we're going to rank those four guys between Chad, Jordan, River, and Ramesh, how would you guys rate that for?
Chad number one.
Jordan's the king of that division.
Sorry?
For me, out of the Aussie kids at 63.5 kilos, Jordan's the king of the division. Jordan,
yeah, same. If he's going to fight again, then him and Chad would be sick.
That'd be a great fight. I put Jordan at the top of that. At the top of that group for sure. Followed by Chad.
Yeah. And it's hard because I don't think we're ever going to get to see River and Ramesh unless something happens and they fight with each other. But I don't think that's going to happen. They're both trained with Hammer now and they're training partners, and Ramesh cornered River on the weekend. So
I don't like the fight either, to be honest.
River and Ramesh.
I think it'd, I don't know.
Yeah, no. The fight to make in that division for sure is Jordan and Chad. That is an awesome fight. That is absolutely the fight to be made.
And that's the fight to do in Victoria. That's a traditional Sinaji fight, WA versus Queensland.
2 hours.
I like what's his name? Anthony Pappas. He's got a real nice. I remember watching him because he used to be little as well, but he's gone up a bit.
He's still 61, I think.
Yeah, I watched
because he fought Gott right at 61.
Yeah. Because I asked to get him for Jan when you guys got locked down and we thought we could still run an adult show with open borders. I asked for him, and I think Peasy said he's more like 61 kilos now.
Okay. He fought Zach as well on Rogue, on our friend Adam King's Rogue as well. That fought to a draw, but it was like to be honest, it was Zach that won that fight. But yeah, they fought on the last Rogue as well.
I've only seen him fight once live in Victoria. He fought on Warriors Way. He's one of those guys that like the way he looks and his style and stuff, you kind of look at him and go, man, he looks real good. It's just seeing him like turn it up and execute it and win the fight. I think that's what I want to see from him. It's crazy to think that my first 8-man was at 62 kilos or 61. And we had like 8 guys. We only brought 2 people internationally, and we had extras. And I can't think of how we'd fill up a 61, 62 kilo 8-man at the moment.
And they're all going up in weight now too. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of all this. Hopefully December or late November, early December, we'll start to see some interstate fights on the East Coast. But yeah, and then I guess next year we'll only really get to see what the guys on West Coast. Hopefully, we might need a passport, but like comparatively, so they're fighting each other a lot. But we want to see what level they're at nationally, you know.
Yeah, so definitely now I think we agree. At 63.5, Jordan's number one. At 61 kilos, Chris Newen.
61.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him and Pappas, man. Like, if God's still fighting, yeah, mad. But Pappas is good. I just felt like he didn't do as well. I mean, obviously he's fighting God, but he's got a really nice left kick. I think the clinch let him down a little bit, or he might have been a little bit kind of starstruck fighting God maybe on that show. Mucked up a couple of things when they were locking up, but on the outside he did a pretty good job with his left leg. But him and Chris would be a pretty sick fight too, man.
And then Kian Lockie just won the 61 kilo Australian title, WBC, didn't he? On domination, was it domination? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 65.
Man, that 65 thing, we either have to actually have that as a recognized division.
For me, the perfect example is Singh, right? Like, the guy is a freak. 67 is too big. Like, if he's coming in against a big, let's say Chad at 67, that fight's not okay. 65, again, he fights a little bit stronger, could potentially make 63.5, but 65 is like bang on the money for some of these guys. And that extra 2 kilos just for some of them seems to be almost too much, you know?
It's just like, you know, I did Chad and Roy Wills, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. And that was so hard to get down to 63.5 kilos because Roy was still like kind of coming up from 62. But he didn't want to fight 65 at that stage yet because he was kind of young. But Chad, they were real worried about getting him down to 63.5. It was like that's 64 and a bit kilos. Then Sam Barr couldn't make 63.5, couldn't really fight at 67. Right now, Alexi can make 65, but I don't think he'll make 63.5 kilos ever again. Ramesh is 63.5 still, but probably more comfortable at 65. It literally it sounds really weird having a 1.5 kilo weight division gap, but for some reason, so many people like look at Max. Max will do 65, 63.5, no way. It's like we kind of need that weight division.
What about that Eddie, Darren's boy Eddie? I mean, he's just booked in to fight Jack 300 now. I can't wait to see how he handles that because he's coming along pretty good too, eh? Like really kind of shot up to the next level. So I don't know what weight.
He was before we matched River and Chalk. I spoke to Riddler and I said, Riddler, who's a good 63.5? Because I'm like, other than Jordan, because I knew that Jordan's partner was pregnant and he wasn't going to fight. So I just said, look, who's a good 63.5 kilo now in WA? And he said, look, I'd put River in with Eddie, and they fought before once years ago on a Rebellion show. But he said, yeah, I'd put him in because he's improved a lot. So I'm really keen to see how he goes against Jack, which is, you know, I don't know where Jack is at the moment, but he's always going to be a tough dude to fight. He doesn't just show up to collect the paycheck.
Yeah.
Well,
there you go.
Make the division.
At 65 kilos, would Max be, Andy, outside of Singh? Do you think Max is the number one guy at that division?
Yeah, man. I think so, for sure.
Well, obviously, I'm going to say yes. Yeah, I'm going to say yes. Absolutely. I think that Max has got a few. He still is. I think that the Singh fight did a lot for him. In those first, like people knew about Max, but there was also a lot of people who didn't. And just some of what he showed in the Singh fight, he's definitely grown a few more fans just from the start of those first few rounds in the fight, just showing some of his ability with timing and the light. So I'm pretty excited for some of the fights that we potentially have lined up for him, just to keep putting a point on it.
He did make a move from the only state openly having regular Muay Thai shows.
Oh, what a time.
to the dark wall Bermuda Triangle of hope that is the east coast of Australia.
It's like the people who moved from Melbourne to Sydney to get away from the lockdown.
Man,
you guys don't know about that. Shout out to Seamus Robinson, my former boxing coach at my gym, who moved to Sydney on the day the lockdown were announced to get away from the CCP state of Victoria. Just a shout out, pal. I know you like to watch the content, Seamus.
Not the only one, man. He's not the only one.
Yeah, it's like lockdowns won't last forever, but New South Wales is shit forever. So think about what you're doing.
It's all right, man. You guys are copying us. So
yeah, we're on our way out.
Wait till you get to 1,000, bro. Then we can talk.
Oh, we copied you guys.
Oh shit.
All right, so moving along to review of local fight shows. On Sunday, we had a show we were all slightly involved in, somehow, one way or another.
Yes.
Roots 15.
15
Man.
Roots.
I'm like,
I can't say it without laughing.
I still can't believe it all went ahead, which is great. So there was nerves until the last second of the last fight.
Can we just I'm flagging it for next time because it's a really controversial topic, and today I've been on the phone a lot about it. Next week, let's flag I don't want to talk about it too much at the moment with COVID and vaccines, but next week we're going to have to talk about the hot topic of what's going to happen in the future, predictions for vaxxed versus not vaxxed fighting.
Andrew, we don't have a hot topic for today, so we can talk about it today.
Well, let's get past yours first, because I feel like this is probably the last show where you're going to be able to do that. So I was impressed. I mean, it was so good to be able to see live Muay Thai again. Roots or not, I don't really care, man. It was just so good to see the people, and I think the Muay Thai community really needed that. We're kind of like carnies, right? But I got big hands, and we see each other week by week, and every show you're seeing the same heads week after week, and it's a community of carnies, and we haven't seen each other face to face for so long. People's online presences and opinions and stuff on Facebook has really kind of changed a whole lot of things, and to be able, and you would have felt it, I felt it just from watching it, but no doubt being out in the back sheds, even segregated, but to see at least the Melbourne or the Victorian Muay Thai community together doing their thing, from the cameraman to the production crew to the referees and officials and Combat Sports Authority guys, fucking kudos to you, man. It probably just helped them in so many ways to just get their heads a little bit clearer, back on track, in that this thing can happen again. And hopefully, come the end of the year, as we start to open up a little bit, we can take it a little bit further, man. So anyway, good on you.
I think that's the nicest.
It's funny, man.
Trying to keep it straight, mate.
No, that was lovely. I've
got goosebumps, man.
All right, sorry, go on. You go on, Simon. What were you going to say?
Sorry.
It's funny, man.
Are you okay day today?
My internet thing.
So was it good there to see those people, Si? How did you feel? I saw you running around like a fucking lunatic, even though you had nowhere to run and no crowd to tell to put their phones away. You could have just been sitting there, but you chose to run around still.
Dude, we're running a live stream only event, and one fight goes in and the live stream stops. And I go to the production truck, and I'm getting messages well, it says live here. I'm I understand what that says, but I'm pretty sure all you boys message me, my brother and stuff message, everyone's messaging me, and I'm it's not working. So, we've got the live streaming platform that's in the background that goes behind Cling. That's the paywall. So we had to set up another event, quickly upload it, attach the thing, and put it up again.
Wow.
And that goes on. And it's like, okay. And like having to get out the information to refresh. And then what happens? 25 minutes later, bang again. And then what ended up happening was like, we ended up going, what Paris had done was he pushed it out to this new cloud thing that he'd apparently got and all this stuff. And we rehearsed it 3 days before. And the second we just went back to our old regular setting that we've used on all the shows before without a problem, it came back on. And it was like, yeah, I was running around and cursing. I was like, why? Relax, everything's going well. I'm like, I understand, but there's no one in here. There's people out there, and there's people out there who've like, you know, man, everyone got behind it. And like we talk about the Victorian community, but everyone got behind it. There was one shithead who called in a false report to the police on the night, but everyone was behind it. So many people sponsored it. So many people bought the stream. So many people shared it. It was a group thing. And I'm like, man, the last thing I want is like, yeah, the show was great, especially because we couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. That's why I was running around. And also I was one of the COVID marshals. So I was just making sure everything was right.
Oh, nice. Didn't have a jacket on.
I think you're using that new system for your Zoom and your internet at the moment. Are you using the new system?
Sorry?
Yeah. You're using that new system now?
Man, I've gone on my phone.
Oh, he's cut out it right.
We've got it. It's you and I now, man. It's you and I now.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. He's back. He's back. Okay.
Yeah, it's the internet. Anyway, but yeah, so it was funny because like some Herald Sun reporter contacted me on Tuesday. Like Monday, my daughter breaks her shin, so that's why I didn't post anything. So I've gone from fight show the night before to hospital with a 4-year-old with a break. Anyway, the reporter contacts me, and I had an interview with him, and I videoed it for like, you know, how Tom makes stuff afterwards, but also I shared it with an advisor. And it was funny because at the start you could tell they kind of wanted to catch you out a little bit, but he was a really nice dude. But he said, he goes, oh, how do you feel doing something like this when, you know, all these other things are shot? I'm like, look, it's not like we're doing this all the time, but also I felt really good about it because the day before we got the go ahead for the show was the day they basically said, your gyms aren't going to open till late October. So it actually was something that gave us here a lot of hope. And even at the weigh-ins and at the show, no one was like hugging and high-fiving. Everyone's kind of like standing back, trying to be on everyone's best behavior. It was just so good to be there. But then, you know, you guys aren't there. And I don't remember the last time Don wasn't at a show and stuff. That was what made it really weird, was like so many people were there with gyms who were like the best people. They made it happen, not me. But there was also no interstaters. Don wasn't there. Keith wasn't there. It's like guys who like, they're like the ring road. Peter Sherwood wasn't there. Like, geez, when was the last time that happened?
Shout out to Peter Sherwood. Sorry I did that to you, man, but
I still made him work. He still did a bunch of work and handed it in.
Messaged me on the night too. It's a shame fucking you're not there to abuse Sai again, but anyway.
And I'll tell you what, shout out to the boys on the mics too, because they made a huge impact, I think, on the stream. Like that was just, I think Matty Williams has been, I think he had those puns. I think since shutdown happened, he's been planning those. Like he was just on top of it, man. I was like, yeah.
It's so subtle, it's mad.
It's just like very well.
One had me. I was laughing. It was so good.
I think we all know what it's like sometimes when you get stuck watching a stream and you put it on mute, because you do, man. I've watched streams and but those boys, man, they were incredible. Like, I think they did an amazing job too, because you don't have that little bit of crowd atmosphere. I think it was cool to hear some of the noise from the corners. They were like vocal just enough to give a little bit of atmosphere to it. The referees as well felt like they were that little more trying to push the pace maybe than they normally would. And then having the boys on the mic too, I feel like, man, it worked so well. Like I was so impressed by the way it all just came together, and without a crowd, only having, you know, what would have been less than maybe 50 people in there to have it feel like it had so much atmosphere. I loved it.
Well, like in the actual area that the ring was, there was probably 20, 25 people at most at any time. And then in the warm-up room, we had probably 25 people at any time at the most, and all separated out. and being on the inside with the fight, like everyone's like, oh, it feels like, would it feel like a thing at your gym? I'm like, no, at the gym, like when people are sparring, there's still noise and stuff in the background and all yelling. This was like the music, and like we'd still managed. We had Jesse the DJ there because we still needed someone to control the music, but like the music was even that loud, so it was really funny. And then I watched the replay though there, and like I'm having a conversation with the combat sports board about something, and you can kind of hear it in the background. But yeah, man, like Maddie's such a legend, and they've had some tragedy in their family recently, so shout out. But Maddie and Lani, like they've done so much. And then Timmy normally MCs Roots, and he says, I don't know if he actually hates it or not, but he doesn't get a choice, so he does it. And John DeMcCauley messaged me and goes, hey, if you want me to MC, I'm available. And I thought, look, we probably don't have a budget to spend on all this stuff, but we need to get everybody who can be involved. And I said to Timmy, do you want to commentate? He was like, thank you, God. So he did that. But yeah, Maddie's done it with Andrew a couple of times and with Hannah. And, I'm big raps on that guy, and he's got the right voice. So we'll be seeing him again.
Yeah, they both did awesome, and they both did a great job.
And the fights, standout performances.
So this is one of the things was Talia and O'Neill, beside the fact that they put 5 out of the 16 fighters on the card, and they've been supporting this from day one, and they were meant to have 7 fighters on. They put up a $600 extra to split $300 each to 2 of the guys fighters in the undercard. So the first 5 fights, the 3x2s. So not a fighter of the night, a fight of that undercard, just to chuck those guys a bit of extra cash on top of their purse. What did you guys think?
Well, we were messaging about this today, right? And we misread it as fighter of the night. And then Andy and I were straight away messaging you about who we thought. We had like our differences of, I
think that for me, like, so if it's an undercard, the first 5 fights, I really can't remember the names, but an exciting fight where both boys just really threw down was the 2 Asian fellas. You had like one boy trying to punch holes in the other one, and the other boy trying to kick.
So that would have been Kevin Liu and Johan Kwan.
That's the one for me.
Excitement, like Canberra. Shout out Johan. He was from Canberra. Shout out.
Where is he?
Well, I knew him from here. I don't know if he was originally from here, but that's how I knew him.
I was a bit disappointed with Johan because like they send their music and their fight stuff, I get him to fill out the form, and his fight name was the Genghis Khan, like Genghis Khan. And then he sent me his music. I'm like, how are you coming out to that name and not coming out to the Who, the Mongolian heavy metal band? So I put it on him that he has to do it for the next show. He came out to like some anime. I never know what to say.
What do you want him to come out to?
Sorry?
What do you want him to come out to?
You should check this out. There's a Mongolian hard rock heavy metal band called the Who, H-U. They're brilliant. Okay. And they have a lot of songs about Genghis Khan and stuff like that. So you'll occasionally see a Mongolian fighter in the UFC that comes out to them, and they're awesome, and their video clips are amazing. But you're more of a Beaver man, Parnham, so I can't believe you thought I didn't know who Fat Joe was. Trying to catch me out.
So is it going to the boys then? Is that the...
Yeah, so Kevin Liu and Johan Kwan, I paid out their purses today. I'll be chucking an extra
Congrats, boys.
300 each from the lovely Tali and O'Neill.
Standout performances.
Congrats, boys. Any others that stood? Who was it you'd mentioned to us in the chat, Andy? There was one boy that stood out to you.
I like, again, I'm sorry, Si, I hope you got the card there. The boy from Boys Gym, tall, lanky fella.
Jack Bennett, so the manager. He started off at Jordan Fielding's gym, Strongheart, and then moved to Dom and Superboy's gym. That was his 2nd or 3rd fight on Roots. So he was 2-0, and he fought Gene Dunn from Dominance.
I liked him, and I liked again, man, sorry, but another Asian fella who had a really nice kicking game, hands down. He was like, he could have kept his hands up a little bit more. I think he's a little bit too
Andrew,
not
you
experienced enough. Sorry, not experienced enough to do that. But it would have been nice for him to keep him up for a little bit.
Was
longer.
he in the undercard?
Yeah, man.
And he
had a
lost?
nice kicking game. I think so. Yeah.
But that would have been Josh Lim, also from Dominance.
Yeah. Good style. The other boy was just too big and strong, I think, from memory.
And I liked the boy from Keel's gym, like for his debut, his patience. Like I thought he like that was the thing that impressed me the most from him. He looked like he had a really good eye and really good patience. Yeah, I can't remember his name either, but
Jack Matthews. So him and his brother, both amateurs. I think his brother might be under 18. And his brother fought on the last Muay Thai Victoria event. And he got sort of matched fairly last minute on the May show. And they've stuck by the show since May. Like Tracy and Q have been ridiculously amazing. But he was really good. Like I watched the first 2 rounds of his fight before the stream went not so live. But yeah, he's had, I think, 4 amateurs, and that was his pro debut.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I thought he showed good composure for someone of that experience.
And the guy he fought, Louis Bubas from Dominance. Like he's come to, sometimes the Dominance guys come here and do some boxing at my gym, and they come sparring sometimes on Friday nights. Like he was really, really composed and strong. Like you watch him, even like he'll do partner work and stuff with some of our boxing guys who've been training for a while, have had a few fights, and he doesn't get frazzled. And I was in the back of my head, I was really worried they might end up being too strong for Jack, because Jack had just turned 18. He's coming off his amateur fights. And then, I watched the fight and was like, all those boys, like the Dominance guys, it was the first time ever I've seen that gym, like not walk away with a win, but all the guys they put in, they're like decent, strong, confident guys. They're not like their first timers or second fight, but they're all like, you back them. Like you wouldn't at training, you never go, these guys are just like nothing. They're going somewhere. So hats off to their opponents for actually taking away the wins.
And now what about the back 3, which was starting with Ryan and Darren? Darren training at a Superboy, but was originally from somewhere else, Matty had said.
So Darren was from Laos to his gym, and he's fought at like 61, 63 and a half. And then he moved up to 66 to fight Ryan. And Ryan used to train with us at William Street Gym. And then when I got rid of the Thai boxing, he moved to Dominance. And he fought Jordan Barkey on the last Roots card.
Yeah.
And he fought Johnny Victoria's brother from Pamon's gym on another Roots card. So I've given him fairly hard fights. He's one of my closest friends, but I keep giving him hard fights to have. And I wasn't sure. I was like, man, Darren's looked small compared to Ryan. Like Ryan really sucked it up to get to 66. And Darren wanted 65 max, but he just jumped up to 66. Man, I watched the bits of that fight, and I'm biased. Like I thought, God, Ryan's doing well. And then like there's one of the scorecards was he lost every round.
Yeah.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, we can. There was a little bit. There was always sort of one Well, I felt like maybe a couple of times I thought there was maybe one inconsistent scorecard, and then again. But
Ryan's one of those guys, man. Like I'm obviously not his trainer, but I do sit in the corner sometimes and yell stuff. He's one of those guys, man, where I feel like if he didn't try to walk, like if he just stayed back a little bit and kicked, he does so much better. And I was really worried when he fought Darren. Darren's a friend too. Was that I know Darren comes from Tui and he's got decent hands. I was just like, man, if he gets into like a big punching exchange with Darren could actually hurt him there. And I think when Ryan just kind of stays and kicks, and like I wish he'd just left kick a little bit more. He actually scores pretty well, but he sometimes just wants to walk forward and try to finish. I'm like, man, just stand strong and kick. And I reckon for a guy his height and his weight, that would be the strategy for him.
Speaking of sign in the corner, I have this fond memory of an Abbas fight on Warriors Way. And I remember him taking one round where he wasn't doing that well. And I just remember seeing you storm your way around the ring. This was the most emotional I'd ever seen you in my life. Like just Iranian pride. You stormed your way around. Absolutely let loose from the side of the ring. I'd never seen anything like it.
It was Abbas versus Lee Fook.
Yeah.
And Abbas is like, man, like I'm Iranian. I've never had a lot of Iranian friends in Australia. I have a couple that I used to wrestle with, but Abbas is genuinely, I love that dude. And he was fighting and he was just sitting back against the rope and not doing anything.
Oh, man.
And I was like, and man, you watch Abbas fight, and he, man, I reckon he's got a better kicking style than some Thais. And he just wasn't doing anything. I'm like, Abbas.
Man, that was.
He's a southpaw, right? I'm like, just kick him. And I remember I skits it out so bad because I'm like, I don't know what it. I love that dude so much, and I like Lee, obviously, but I was like, man, and you could just see it's like he's got Min and Yaya talking calmly, and then I'm just like, oh.
Great times. Anyway, Tim and David.
David Bargel, man, like David had like 4 or 5 fights in a row where he won, and I think he's lost his last 2 or something. And he moved up to 70 kilos for that fight. Tim's coming off a loss against Matt Mumbai. Tim lost his first pro fight, I think, and then he won all of them, and then he lost to Matt. And that was a bit of a hard one. So the week before the show, because he was still sitting at like 78 kilos thinking the fight's not going to happen. So he did a massive cut and he came down to like 61 and a half, which was pretty like, shitty. And like we told David and Andrew Colgrave a couple of hours before, I think he's going to come a bit over, don't keep cutting weight. And David he's a man. He's a ninja. He kept cutting weight and he goes, nah, I'm coming in at 70 kilos. Because that's the weight we agreed to. He could have just stopped cutting, and he sent Andrew a message, which Andrew then sent to me that goes, Muay Thai's not for everyone. It's not easy. And then at the weigh-in, as soon as the face-off was done, he basically just bailed him up. So he took a bit of Tim's flight first too, but Tim, under normal circumstances, would definitely make 70 kilos. It's just, I think dropping 8 kilos in 7 days wasn't going to be his thing.
Oh,
yeah. Man, big raps on Tim. I think he's got a big future. Like I said last week, like I haven't really done this with fighters, but there's a couple, and mainly Tim so far, that I'm taking on as I'm his promoter, like help with not he's got management, but I'm his promoter, and I'm going to try to get him some fights interstate and stuff. And I've told him it's like, this doesn't mean you're ever going to get easy fights. Like he's had losses, he's had wins. I think he's got a lot of potential in the future, but we just need to get him regular fights. And he's started, I think his first fight on Roots was at 76, then he fought at 74. 72 and a half on Rebellion. He fought Daniel Stroud and he stopped him. He's knocked out a couple of guys. And then his last fight was against Matt Mumbai. So this was a good fight for him. Like David's super tough. And I've already spoken to Andrew, like we'll get David back in December and get someone closer to his weight. And yeah, I think he's got good potential too. He's just, I think he's, I just don't want him to get disheartened because I told him before, I'm like, listen, man, I love Timmy. We're friends as well, but just so you know, but I hope he sticks it out because he's one of those guys. I think he just needs 3 or 4 more fights to figure it out and just be a little bit more stable in the ring, a little bit calmer, and start thinking, and he'll be good.
Main event time.
Ooh. Before we go, did you notice David threw Tim Nguyen with a judo hip throw in the middle of the fight.
The comment was that Matt made was fantastic.
Man, every time Andy's guys fight, remember when Seb fought Cal Potter and Cal threw him with a hip throw?
Yeah.
Yes. Sarah, who's
There's always one.
a bit of judoka, always throws one.
Mad. Green belts handed out all day. I think that's what Matt said. I think it was so funny, man. It killed me.
And then, the main event. So, River and Alexi, two very, very different styles. I'm not going to comment too much on some things, but I'm going to comment a lot on other things. I'll let you two boys talk.
Well, for me, I dozed off in the last round, but rewatched it back. And like I said last week in the prelim, I felt like Alexi would win that fight if he stood there and showed his strength and fought that type of fight instead of trying to mimic River. River did really well. Like, he's, again, super quick. I don't know if it was the weight thing or not, or preparation physically, to me, didn't look his normal self, but I think that might have just been the weight thing. He's a bit more shredded than that normally. I thought Alexi had it, man. Like, round one, potentially a draw, 2, 3, 4 to Alexi. And then 5, again, like I said last week, Alexi farted us around in a round that he really should have tried to put an exclamation mark on it when doing the spinning and stuff like that. I don't know what the judging scorecards were like, but I feel like, I don't know. I thought he had the fight won, man. Like, it's not River. It's not River in that he's not doing enough, but I just feel like those shots there needs to be something in him, man. Like the pop, that's like a shoe shine in Western boxing. If there's just an exclamation mark on that, as like a massive, like a big right hand or a big kick to finish it, I feel like he's going to do better Muay Thai scoring wise. Saying that he won on points, so I shouldn't be criticizing that. But it's gonna just put an exclamation mark on all that speed and the awesomeness that he is. Whereas Alexi on the other side, big heavy shots, was doing real good, but I think he dropped the ball in the 5th. But he still should have won it, in my opinion. Kieran?
Yeah, look, I agree, and you start to have the argument of volume versus shot selection and power, which for me, like shot selection and power, as we understand Thai boxing scoring, like power. Look, we can go into it. We don't need to go into it for too long, but yeah, for me, Alexi won. I think Alexi didn't do himself any favors in those number of spinning elbows, and I thought like once it was fine, but he started to do it a few times, and I just thought, man, if you would just stand there and throw another left kick instead, I'm not sure what you're looking for. You don't need the Hail Mary, because to me, he was winning the fight. I didn't think it was like a desperation spinning elbow. So I thought the shot selection there was confusing. You saw every time they clinched up, if Alexi could, he would control the arms well, get some knees straight to the body. He would win a lot of those clinch exchanges. River would attempt some sort of takedowns over the inside of his thigh, but miss the timing of it as well. And I'm a big River fan for like his speed and unique style. I think he does what he does for himself incredibly well, and he's got a lot of talent. But for me in that fight, the same as Andrew, I've got to say, in my opinion, Alexi won for those exact same reasons. I had Alexi winning because of his shot selection and because of the power behind those shots versus perhaps the volume that wasn't necessarily landing with any sort of oomph.
It's like a couple of things. Number one, I think Alexi was really well prepared, and his weight was like, I think Andrew was asking me, how's he going to get down to 65 nowadays? And he, I think because Ep3 had a few more fighters who were registered for this show, they had a full team to train.
Okay.
Most of the last few months, like River and Hammer have been doing this kind of solo plus his strength and conditioning. And I think he'd kind of come down in weight, gone in weight, come back down. Whereas Alexi always knew it was going to be the 21st of August and then move. Whereas River had a few things. It was going to be May 28, then June 16. Then, you know, when we pushed it to August, there was still talk of him having a boxing fight in the middle of that. So it kind of, that's potentially a little bit. And he was also a bit heavier, but, you know, like he came in fit and everything. 1.5 kilos extra on his frame probably showed a little bit. Strategically, I think if you got River's side and Lexi's side, if you think tactically, this is where it becomes really difficult. And I want to be really respectful to both sides because they're good friends, and they both applied the strategy they wanted. It wasn't like River went in and wanted to do these things and he couldn't do it, and Alexi went in there and it wasn't like he wanted to do these things and he couldn't. For me as the promoter, and like the reason I'm super gutted for Alexi is I've seen Alexi spit it, like lose his shit after a fight and go on a rampage on social media and stuff, and he handled it amazingly controlled. But for me, seeing him in the back and what I've heard since, to know, and this is like the thing I've always wanted to avoid it with Rebellion, was he's like broken and defeated mentally with it. And it's happened to him a couple of times where it's been like, what the fuck was that? Like, there's probably fights that he won back in the day, maybe on Brute Force. I know, like when he fought Sean Clancy, there was a massive thing from the other side. But there was like when he fought Sam Bark, where I think even Sam thought Alexi won that, and Alexi copped it on the chin. And he looked in the back. He wasn't angry. He was just quiet and sad. And to see that, like, Rivers, my mate, Hammer's my mate, Alexi's my mate, Dom's my mate, and to see someone that's paid their dues to Muay Thai in Victoria feel like that, to the point where they're saying he doesn't even want to train people at the moment. He's like that gutted by it. It's shit. And like, I can't tell someone how to feel, but to hear that that's how it feels really pissed me off. And what annoys me, and I'll explain the scorecards to you guys, which is a little bit crazy. So Judge one.
Man, it was a fucking good fight.
It was.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was everything that we discussed last week it was going to be. And like what you said, the strategy of Hammer and River together was on the money, got him the win. The strategy of Alexi was on the money and probably should have won him the fight, really. But it was a fucking awesome fight too, man.
Like, just to give you guys an idea of what I'm dealing with, and the people judging and stuff, I'm friends with all of these guys. I think some people are suited to Muay Thai and some people aren't. Like, you guys saw the Gene Dunn fight versus Jack Bennett, the tall kid that you guys like from Dom's, and he dropped the guy in the last round, 8 count, and realistically he should have been waved off because he squatted back down to the ground and he couldn't stand up.
Yep.
One judge gave that fight a draw, right? The other 2 judges gave that fight 30-26, which is, in my opinion, is completely right.
Wow.
Now, so the one judge that I think particularly really stung for Alexi, and I think you can lose, but when you get this is when it becomes kind of hard to deal with. One judge gave the first round to Alexi and gave every subsequent round to River, whereas the 2 other judges gave that first round a draw. And then there was 10-9, 10-9 to River, 9-10 to Alexi, 10-9 to River. So it was a 49-47 towards River. Then the other judge gave the first round a draw. 10-9, 10-9, 10-9 to Alexi, with the last round to River. So those last 2 are kind of, there's a gray area, but there's some similarities. Whereas when you go the first round, I don't think anyone I've spoken to would give that first round to Alexei. Like, I think a drawn round was really fair.
Yeah.
So
and then to say every single round after that, I don't think, in honesty, not talking about the fight in entirety, I don't think I don't think Hammer would agree with that, and I don't think River would agree with that, and I don't think anyone would agree with that. And that's the problem for me. It's like, if you got that far a gap on scorecards.
No. So have you guys read the Matthew McConaughey green light?
How good is it? Hey,
So I got something in there.
The audio book. Everyone go get the audio book.
It's just business, and I don't want to like slag this guy off, because it takes a lot of bollocks to become a judge and actually sit there with the pressure that you've got. And I know I've done it a lot, and it sucks, but it's just business. And unfortunately, how did he get there? For starters, who was responsible for that? Why did that happen? And how can combat sports authorities continue to fuck this up? And there's no other words for it. I don't know if it's a G-rated show, but they fuck it up. They've done it to us.
With your face, Ethan, is a G-rated show. It's the rudest thing here.
Thank you. But they fuck it up.
Yeah.
And to be given officials, and then for combat sports authorities to, like, they say they're doing it in the integrity, like for the integrity of the sport and all that bullshit. But it happens here when Trevor looks at our roster of officials and he sees a girl like Jenny, freaking awesome referee, but she's like tiny, and Trevor will pull her out and put her. He deliberately won't give her a big fight. The Combat Sports Authority will say, no, that's our job. You don't get to do that. You need to referee that 120 kilo monster. And like, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys?
So we've got a good combat sports here. Simone, I've spoken to her since the day.
She's very good. Most
of the guys and the judge in particular, I have no issue with him doing kickboxing and K1 fights, and I genuinely don't know. He's a mate, and but for a good reason, for the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't had him on Rebellion because I think there's a gap. It's not he doesn't get it. It's just that his frame of what is scoring is different to what we are as generally. So his thing, I think he completely, like, if his idea is this is how fights are scored, and there is a nuance between different styles.
But you've got the 3 officials, and that's why you have 3.
Yeah.
1, 2. If one of them fucks it, the other 2 should cover. Or if one of them can't see the right thing, the other 2 should cover.
100%. And that's happened in the past. But this is what I'm going to say. I think some people, a big percentage of people, I'm not saying a majority, but I'm saying a big percentage of people would see the fight the way that the judge that scored it towards Alexei had it. And I think if I had 2, 3 or 4 ties sitting there judging the fight like that, then I'm sure there'd be guys on Riverside who would go, well, this is bullshit. This is just the ties looking after the Thai gym. So we're kind of stuck in that scenario a little bit. So just bear with me.
Yeah.
I didn't want this particular judge judging fights. I probably would have been happy with refereeing, but for some reason, a couple of other guys weren't available. This was the issue. The combat sports, Simone has said to me, and they've said, they go, we're not Muay Thai people. We can't review this. So straight after the fight, there was as soon as that fight ended, the group of officials and Combat Sports Board went together and had it started, because there was an objection and they had to deal with it straight away. There is no real, unless you can call it collusion or the scorecards were added, there isn't really a way you can process with a objection. But I feel like there isn't, you've got everyone on that board who's a boxing people plus 1 grappling person, but there's no Thai boxing people that can look at it and go, if it was 3 rounds to 2, one way or another, that's one thing. But for someone, and I hope I'm not out of line saying this, for someone who said, I thought the first round was a draw, but I won't ever give a drawn round, so I gave it to this person. I think that's problematic, right? So taking it outside of the context of this fight, just in this fight, it's that this sort of stuff's going to happen. And it's not because they don't see it. It's just that if somebody comes in and goes, I believe everything scores the same, doesn't matter how much speed, how much power, doesn't matter if it lands or doesn't land, I score everything the same. Like, and they see it and they score it the way they believe it. And no one says to them, hey, that's not how this gets scored. Then we have a problem. And people who say everything should score the same, I say, all right, do you think a jab to the head and a cross to the head, as a person who likes punching, do you think a jab and a right straight should count the same? Or do you think a jab that lands and the guy's head bops back, or a jab that just hits and the guy just walks through it, do you think that scores the same? Like, let's not talk about kicking and kneeing and elbowing. Let's talk about the stuff you like. Do you think a low kick that slaps on the leg should count the same? Like a inside low kick as a outside low kick where they turn their hip over and the guy's leg. Do you think that's what I want to ask the judges? Do you think that scores the same? Do you think when you say everything should score the same, do you think a knee that lands like a slapping round knee should count the same as a spearing knee where the guy gets folded in half? People say everything scores the same. I'm like, how do you say that?
Man, like that aside, man, that poor bloke shouldn't be put in that position where he's now being talked about. I
think that's a good thing to point out, is like, it could seem like we're saying, hey man, you're shit. No, not necessarily. It's like, imagine if it's like, imagine if someone just turned to Andy, and because you've refereed an Oz kick game once and they go and throw you in a Premier's AFL game, like, and you're not going to know, but you can't say no, like you're told to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's not his fault. It's just, obviously there's the breakdown experience, but he's been appointed and he shouldn't have been appointed.
But I see it with, I've watched MMA with Muay Thai people who I go, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no way that guy won that round. And I've watched MMA or stuff with pure grappling people who don't necessarily, I don't agree with, because I go, you're not actually thinking about the objective of this sport. And like, exactly like you said, putting someone in there without giving them any training and feedback, this is the problem it causes. And I think for Alexei, again, losing a 3-2 or one even round and blah, 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 I think wouldn't be as hard a pill to swallow as to someone saying, you lost every single one of round 2, 3, 4, and 5, even though one of the rounds was like, when he switched southpaw and he was left kicking the body, I'm like, man, if you don't, like, let's say you don't think kicks underarm score, you surely think they score when someone's elbow is going into their body when they get kicked, right? Like, that's what stings it for him. And I think that's what becomes repeatedly hard, is when people just have a completely different idea of what the sport should be. So, I can't watch a basketball game and say, if you hit the backboard with a ball, that's a 3-pointer. That's how I'm going to score it. That's my idea of it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think I've seen the issue before where I've noticed it in New South Wales before. Andy, you can correct me if you think otherwise, but I've seen the Combat Sports Authority accept differing rule sets of what is Thai boxing, and then they teach. And so you've got one sanctioning body that teaches it one way, one that teaches another. Instead of having the one set of rules, you have like multiple set of rules and interpretations for the exact same sport. And then
I get what you're saying.
Forking off.
If it's clear, then it's okay. I feel like if it's clear, it's okay. But if it's just like what it should be, and if you're told that that's what's going to score and that's the way it should be scored, that's cool. But if it's like, oh, this should score better than this one. If you catch a kick and counter on the leg kick, then that's going to like score more because you kicked the leg. But actually the bloke thumped him in the fucking body and his ribs are red raw, and you're just doing a little tippy tappy leg kick up. Like, it's, yeah, but I don't know. I think for another time maybe, because we're going to run past the Muay Thai Hour part, but the way that, I don't know how Victoria goes with this thing with allocating officials, but with New South Wales allocating officials, we're really lucky. We've got a pretty good relationship with them, but it's fiery, and poor Trevor has to constantly debate with the powers that be for the reasons, fucking oath, for the headaches that he goes through to actually have to justify. He sends our cards to the Combat Sports Authority with the referee and the reason why he's nominating that referee in the hope to influence the Combat Sports Authority to get them to approve that official for that fight. Yeah, fucking like.
The thing with it is, though, is in Victoria, generally speaking, as a promoter, you can request, like, and you've seen the last few years, I generally have the same 7 or 8 guys. But at the same time, this is the reason, like, I used to find it funny when I was the rep for WBC or WMC, where I could kind of A, choose who's the referee, and B, approve the title. I don't think I should be in that position. And what makes it hard, going back to the establishing your tactic on the fight, well, man, Hammond knows, and he's been around forever, and Superboy knows forever. Now, if I pick a particular style of official and one of those guys loses, it shouldn't come back on me. There should be the combat sports or something should have a subcommittee that's knowledgeable that can do that. And unfortunately here, if we get all the Thai boys judging fights, a lot of the gyms will go, well, this is just like they're their own little club. And like anytime one of the guys that's fighting out of a Thai gym loses, it raises that. So I'm like, that shouldn't be my role. Like now that we've got Muay Thai Victoria, we're training officials, and the young kid guy from Morocco, Mark, we're going to get him as a referee. Like he refereed the last Muay Thai Victoria show, and Trevor was like blown away. We were all like, he's a ninja. And Tone, my trainer, he'd be an excellent judge, but I don't want to be going, okay, here's my 6 judges. Because like, we all kind of know what I want to see in the show. And then, but it shouldn't come down to me to select it.
Yeah, but man, I think if they're gonna go, the Thais are giving it. No, I don't really like that argument. That doesn't sit well with me, because who's probably gonna score it the most accurate and the best? So if you're gonna sit, if there are gonna be a group of people who sit there and go, they're just giving it to the that argument doesn't sit well with me.
It doesn't, but some of they're my friends. Some of the Thai boys too. Sometimes they like almost dismissive of the fight, and I've seen them just kind of like. And then they just write the score down, and they're not. And like the board now wants to instigate a thing where they have to write notes after every round. And I'm like, man, these guys are going to struggle to go, I did this round because of this tide. And I just feel like, again, for me at the end of the night to see Alexi like that. And it's like, well, I shouldn't have to be in charge of picking.
Yeah, but so you've gone on the path of hating sanctioning bodies. So our Combat Sports Authority is purely there to protect the integrity of the sport. They're not, they will flat out tell you that they have no knowledge of the sport and they don't want it, which is cool. In my opinion, that's great. The gatekeepers are supposed to be the sanctioning bodies, so that if something like that happens, you're supposed to be able to go as the promoter, so here it is to whoever it is, your officials fucked this up. What happened here?
But
you're not getting that power to do that, because Combat Sports Authority are jumping over the fucking top and saying, well, no, you got to get this guy. Well, who are you? You've told me you don't know anything about combat sports, and now you're going over my head and telling me that a chick should be refereeing a 120 kilo fight, where I'm telling you as a person who knows the sport that she should not be fucking refereeing that one. Or, you know, I don't know, man.
But I think, Andrew, like we don't have that thing with the board. They don't recognize a sanctioning body doing stuff here. And when you're inside of it yourself, it's hard to scrutinize yourself. But end of the day, you guys have multiple sanctioning bodies there. And for as many that will be able to pop it up, they can come up with their own little crew inversion. And then people can go, well, I don't want to fight on massive shows. I don't want to fight on WMC shows. I don't want to fight on WBC. It's like, it's supposed to be one sport. It's like 9 fighters. There has to be an overarching thing that has an understanding of the sport where brands and sanctioning fees and stuff don't come into it. And they do. And that's why my issue is like, getting it to the next level and leaving it just up to us. It's like, well, there should be, the sports authority should be like an overall authority. It's not, but that's what it should be, because end of the day, we're all in little subcategories of WMC, WBC, NASA, blah, blah,
You're going
blah.
to train them, and they don't have any knowledge of the sport, man. Like it's
hire people.
Unless they're going to hire people, they won't. They said in New South Wales that they want to create a subcommittee of industry experts and all these bollocks. It's been 2 years.
Which they did. They do in WA, right? For each combat sport, there is an appointed. Like I think for Muay Thai, it's Ben Carr.
Yeah.
He's like I think there's like a person in WA. Like I'm always quite impressed by the way WA does like the way their combat sports handles things. Like I'm not saying for everything, but I've been impressed by some of them. I think they do it. I think WA has like a sport appointed. At least it was Ben Khan, or I don't know, someone can correct me otherwise, but they do. Yeah, I think it would be good.
Hey, Kieran, you can stay on and chat to me. I think Andrew's got to go do his hair or fall off a skateboard.
Oh, beautiful. Give it another plug, Andy, before you go. Give it another plug.
Dog Mullets for Mental Health, September. Jump on my social media page. You can get the link, or just if you got any other mates who jumping on board, Mullets for Mental Health. Today's Are You OK Day. Kieran, thanks for reaching out this morning. I really appreciate that. You got something you want to tell us? No? Okay, cool. Sweet.
Kieran.
Yeah.
Ancient Greeks.
Really good, man.
Spartan warriors.
Really good.
Anyway, all right. Well, see you, Andrew.
Thanks,
Now we
man.
can have an adult conversation.
Fuck. Jesus Christ. I'll let you guys have your fucking. Anyway, bye.
Bye.
See you, mate. Bye.
All right. Now that he's gone,
Yes.
man, how rough's that head?
I keep watching mine blend into the background. Anyway.
Now that the company man has left, I mean, I think that becomes the issue for me is even coming down to the sanctioning level where we can as individuals do it. Like no one's beyond. Like I understand, like they've done a great job in New South Wales with it, but at the same time, people will always feel like put criticism towards people. And I just think there has to be a more there has to be some other way of doing this where it doesn't become down to my choice and my opinion. Like, as a promoter, I shouldn't have to do it. And I shouldn't be promoter, sanctioning body, trainer.
I thought and I feel like we've been making headway a bit in Australia in regards to a better understanding and more continuity in the way that we score and approach Muay Thai, like state by state. There are obviously some that are still catching up and have a bit of a weird way to look at it, but it's still, Thai boxing in Australia is so fractured from the way that we interpret rules instead of following, as it should be, or having an understanding of rules versus how we score. And it just still seems to me so incredibly fractured and frustrating as well. And I've brought it up so many times, but I hate going to fight shows knowing that technically to the letter of the law in Thai boxing, we've won that fight, but I'm a bit worried because I see X, Y, and Z judge, or I'm in so-and-so state. Like I thought we were making headway, but it just keeps, where are we missing out? It keeps coming back around.
I think it's hard though, because like there's differing scoring even within stadiums in Thailand. There's controversy in Thailand.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the greatest disservices for us bringing Thai boxing into Australia and trying to have it is the fact that there is the gambling influence on the stadiums over there, and fighters do play to the gambling thing. So when you try to, and like that throwback of, it's Thai style scoring, it's like, I think a lot of that stuff and the weighing of the rounds and things, because we've got individual rounds, all that stuff has to be stripped back and then go back to the core basic understanding of it. And like, we're not even at a point of going, the fight was so close that who wins because they were like, the head position was better in a clinch, or they were doing this and they edged. Like, we're talking about the gross stuff. And I think that's where throwing it back to Thailand sometimes is not the way. We just need to strip it back to the core principles of it and what's different between this and that.
And absolutely. And I don't think you need to have an understanding of knowing, like, the odds from the gamblers changing each fight and who's going in as a favorite and how that affects the fight. And I don't think we need to go that in depth, but we still miss out on like very basic strip back principles of Thai boxing when it comes to power and shot selection and these few things. And I'm not talking about like, it just still baffles me that we have this like volume over power conversation, or this like ineffective versus effective, or what's a target and what's not. Like, it just starts to get, I don't know what's going wrong for me personally. And I can only speak for myself personally as a trainer. And we do this even as our group classes, even for those that don't want to fight. When we teach something, we explain why we're teaching it or why we're doing it. Like, it's, and I think it's great when I see other coaches do it. It's great to say to someone, have good balance when you check. It's a different thing to say you need that balance, because if you get kicked and pushed off, you look weaker and it's got blah, 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 blah. Like, explain the reason behind what you do. And I think a lot of people don't do that. And it's not necessarily always, we shift a lot of blame to refs and judges, but we need to put a lot of blame to coaches and trainers and gym owners as well, because there needs to be education there from the start too.
100%. I mean, like, with the fight that we're talking about, like, there's two super experienced gyms and knowledgeable people, so that necessarily isn't the issue. But I understand what you're saying, and I've said that before. I'm like, you can sort of try to teach something to the judges, but if the gyms aren't on board, there's always going to be disputes. But it's even like, that's why I sort of screenshot, I forgot what that app's name is, the Muay. Yeah. And the guy talking about the Tyson versus Leadzilla fight and saying Tyson's kicks weren't hard enough to the point that Leadzilla couldn't block with his arms. So because he used his arms to block a lot of the kicks and countered back. A lot of people like going on the extreme other end of Thai style will go, well, any kick that lands on the arms is scoring and any kick is scoring, right? And it's like, well, on a scale, yes, but a kick on the arm where the guy's arm falls in is a different thing too. Because if all that matters is just, if you just kick the arms all day, you win. Why are we doing Muay Thai with Thai pads? Just do fucking Taekwondo with flipper pads and just work on speed and just pop, kick him in the arm and run for a whole round. Like, I think even in the Thai part of it, I've had people go, you can't, how are you judging power? I'm saying, like, if a kick lands on the body versus a kick that doesn't land, the kick on the body wins. But you can't then also, as a Muay Thai purist, not have the nuance to go, a kick on the body where the guy visibly buckles versus a kick on the body. You can't just go, well, any kick on the body scores more. It's like, no, then the kick on the body that caused damage and make the guy move, that has to score more again. And I think I struggle with a little bit of the guys that just go, well, if you're just kicking him all day. It's like, yeah, he was. But like, a kick that doesn't do any damage versus a big right hand on the head where the guy's head gets rubbed back, you can't say that's a better thing. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like,
don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Damage, effectiveness. I think you can normally answer it with those two. Damage and effectiveness. They for the most part can often, we're not, like you said, we're not judging, like, our level of Muay Thai is not trying to differentiate such a close heavyweighted stadium fight that the difference of someone's balance in the fourth round is going to be the be all and end all. We're not cutting it up that fine. For most fights here in Australia anyway, you can tell the winner or the loser. It's been a long time. It's been a fucking long time. I can't think of a fight where I've not been able to go, that guy won or that guy lost, like, in my opinion, whether I was right or wrong, because I think you can usually say, like, damage and effectiveness in exchanges and in strikes, you can normally answer the question. But I love the analogy that you were talking before about, like, the jab and the cross. And sometimes I have that conversation with, like, punches and kicks. And it's like, well, sure, if you could punch as hard as you could kick to the body, well, then you can start to make all things equal, right? But it's just not happening. You can't generate the same amount of force. So it starts to, we don't have to get it perfect. We just need to find that consistent same line. And I think it's become much better. Absolutely. It's become much better. and we will always, it happens in boxing too, right? And you would know because you're a boxing fan as well. You still get some boxing fights and people throw their arms up. They're like, what were you watching? Like that still happens too. Happens in amateur boxing, especially. But we're always going to have the arguments. It's just minimizing the amount of arguments or the amount of times it happens. We can't
and again, for me, I think my issue as the promoter, like, it's not for me to say this win or that loss. I think it's when something is so much of an outlier of a scorecard where it just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
I think that speaks to a bigger problem. And like I said, like, and you were really right. It's like putting a person in the wrong job sometimes is just doing them a massive disservice. But that it goes back to understanding, and it just kills me, man, because I just think for a fighter to walk away and just go, I'm defeated and I hate this, it's just gut wrenching.
Yeah. And man, it's like, Alexi, please don't. I know that's hard, and I know it's disheartening, especially after having a long break and being on the end of a bad decision. Sometimes you can say as much as you want and it's not going to change anyone's opinion. And this could very much fall on deaf ears, but man, like, please don't let that be the thing that just disheartens you so much, because all we can do now, the decision is there, is you can only focus on the positive. And man, it's hard.
You guys are saying your part, and there's been other people who've messaged me who've agreed with the overall decision, not the round breakdown. And that's a topic for them to talk to. Like, obviously they can explain that to Alexi or whatever. That's not my thing. And again, I don't want to be like disrespectful of the guys that fought. My issue is when it's such a big discrepancy on the cards, and it goes back to a fundamental difference or difference of understanding of the sport. And I think that's the bigger issue than the individual fight. Him being his part of it, that's for me a personal thing, because he fought on Rebellion too. He had his third fight. He fought one of my guys. So like, I've seen Alexi, he's the first Hall of Famer for the show and stuff. And if that's his last fight and he walks away feeling like that, and I know it's particularly the one score, I think that's what's really like eating away at me, because I just don't want someone to feel unjustly treated.
Absolutely. And like, shout out to River too. Like, the dude has got this like speed and style. Like his style is in my opinion, like unorthodox when you speak in the realm of Thai boxing, but like, I have a lot of respect for his speed and his strength. And I had someone say to me the other day something about like they were commenting on it, and I said, man, you have to give a lot of respect to, it's like we commented on, it's different to stand in front of River. It's a different thing to think you can do it. It's a different thing to stand in front of him. And man, he's so quick. Like, he's an incredible athlete. I mean, he's a guy that won a points decision in China. That's like winning point. That's like winning in Japan, points decision.
Tom Gaffigol filmed a close-up of that last round from Sunday. I heard the end of the round. I walked over and Hammer said to River, he said, that round is the reason you are who you are,
man. And
before the round started, Tom's filmed him, and Hammer says to him, you go out there and show who you are.
Awesome.
And I think in their mind, the fight was close. And I think Hammer openly said on Sunday to me, he goes, it was a close fight. But I think he said it to him and he goes, you got to go out there and turn it up and do it. And I think, that's that part of River. Like, man, he fought one of the guys who used to be out in New Zealand, now lives in Sydney. And God, it's the only time I've ever seen River drop. And he came back, and the way he came back and beat that guy on that show, man, I was like, there's something super unique about him.
Absolutely.
And him and Hammer, like, he won't do, like, he's not at a point of like being a remote control, but he won't do something Hammer doesn't want him to do. and they've got a formula where they know how to win fights. And it's like when that video comes out, man, Tom sent it to me last night. Fucking before we go to talk about Tom, it was amazing. Like watching that interaction between them was insane. And then for him to go and, you know, like, I don't think anybody questions that he won round 5. Whatever you said about the other rounds was like, that chat from Hammer was like, man, that was like fucking movie stuff. That was like Eddie Atlas were firing. It was just, oh man, Tom.
You could see it too.
Yeah.
River fought that 5th round like to win the fight. And you saw it when he came out. Like you could hear it too. That was the cool thing about not having the crowd. You could hear it in his vocals every time he would throw a shot. That almost like that sort of grunt that he would do. Man, he really that's cool. I love that. That makes
just before we go, like we didn't get to talk about a hot topic. I think that was hot topic enough. Will and Tom, the amount of work they did last week from go to when the show was done. Everyone who sponsored, amazing, including yourself, man, and so many people. Like it's beyond appreciated. Like everyone's like, "Oh, so you did it." I'm like, literally, if you guys hadn't done what you did, you sponsored so many gyms, sponsored so many businesses, sponsored. Will cracked out so much content and graphics, and he did it to help the show. Like
awesome.
But Tom Gathercole, that dude, like I think I've broken his spirit, and there's no photos of him smiling in the last 4 years, whereas there is before. But man, that guy is so hard on himself, but he does so much work for the show, and like his invoicing is so creative. I'm like, it's almost like he's got to start paying me to work for me. But he did so much lead up stuff, the planning, all those highlights and stuff that came on board that he's done over the years. But there was a screw up filming the show, so I couldn't put the replay on that same night for the people. He went home. He was starting work the next morning at 5:30 a.m. He got home, re-edited the first 5.5, added it up, exported it, tried to download it all throughout the night, fixed some graphic stuff. So, man, that dude is a machine.
I really enjoyed some of the clips that I think it was a nice touch to play a lot of Tom's clips in between.
Yeah. Guess whose idea that was, by the way, Tom?
The guy's a wizard, man. Like
videos of me shadowboxing, but
he's a wizard. But like it got me a bit like, man, I was like emotionally like everyone misses Thai boxing, and watching that was awesome. And I think a lot of the coaches and gyms that was like, I mean, I know I saw myself and some of my fighters in some of that. I know others would have as well. I was a bit like, fuck, I can't wait. Like I can't. It was
You know when Toby and Yakub fought the first time, like 3 fights before the main event, I was sitting in the back room. I was said to Nugget and Blair, I'm like, this is my last show. I'm overdoing this, doing my head in, bro. All right. And I was bitching and moaning so much. Then Tom did the highlight package for that show, and he sent me the Dropbox thing before we drove it. So I went and sat in bed with my wife. It was like, oh, Tom's videos come through. We watched it. And like, man, like goosebumps galore. By the end, my wife turns around and goes, you're never going to stop doing this. But look at this. You're never going to stop doing that. And it's like, man, amazing. Awesome. Even though he's going to be grumpy when we send him this to edit and put on YouTube, this is the way that we're going to make it okay.
He'll be right. He'll be right.
All right, man. Well, long chat, good chat. It was a lot better once Andrew left. Maybe next week we just kind of tell him we're not doing it anymore, and he won't figure out how to access the one.
Shout out to Fairtex as well, Prem and the team.
Chano, the man, those guys, shorts. It was a bit sad. They sent me the Rebellion 24 shorts a week before we realized the show was going to be condensed to 8 fights. But December 4th, Rebellion 24. Hopefully, Roots 16. So much trouble in the world is another Mali song, but we're going to do survival. Hopefully, we're going to have a bunch of you guys from more you down. Again, thank you for sponsoring and all your support. You and Kingy and Andrew online have been massive supporters in the lead up. Obviously, all the local guys. And catch you next week.
Love it.
Cheers, bro.